retailers and suppliers. I'm always telling suppliers and retailers when I speak to them that VDB is just the matchmaker. They still have to go on the date. You know, when you get requests on the VDB platform, you still need to pick up the phone and have these conversations. We want to help you make those connections. So in that vein, I decided to have this conversation between suppliers and retailers on this webinar. So hopefully we can build understanding of one another's perspective and improve our relationships. The panelists today we have Dotan Mirah, COO of MID in Israel, Jay Mehta from Dyson's Gems, and Yair Shemansky from Shemansky USA, and Jamie Pope from C21 Designs. So Yair and Jamie are our retailers, and Jay and Dotan are our suppliers. So the way we're going to do the discussion today is we'll have about 40 minutes of discussion between the panelists, and then at the last 20 minutes, we'll open it up to Q&A. Right now, I'd like to that everyone can hear us. If you have any questions, you should be able to see a Zoom webinar chat on the bottom right of the Zoom box. And we have someone who will answer any questions you have there related to getting set up. And then you'll see there's a Q&A button at the bottom. So please write any questions. And like I said, after the 40 minutes, we'll go through those questions and ask those of our lovely panelists. So one of the things that came up was I was talking to a retailer recently, and you know, he's a smaller retailer here in Boston. I hope he's listening. And he was talking about how he doesn't feel like the suppliers care. It's just a numbers game. You know, he's not as big as other retailers and just doesn't feel like there's any support. It's simply numbers. So I'd like to pose to our suppliers, I'd like you to speak about how you handle memo requests, how you deal with these smaller suppliers, or sorry, smaller retailers to help them and support their business.
Dotan, you want to get started?
Okay. So yeah, why not? So technically we support almost everyone with memo product, credit, you know, try and service them and understand the retail side, meaning that even if they, for instance, get it back, we'll take it back. You know, just understanding the retail side to it, the online side to it, and on. Go on.
I would, yeah, I don't think, you know, personally speaking, the way that we conduct our business, the size of the customer, the amount of business that we do with them, I mean, it matters to some extent, but I would say some of the best relationships that I personally have in all of our sales reps, we have like 6 people internally doing sales. Every person handles different customer accounts, and we have a couple of outbound sales reps. So a lot of, I would say, my better relationships, I'm thinking in my mind right now, some of the people that, you know, I text and I've even like FaceTimed over this quarantine period are not our biggest customers. I don't think that this, you know, we have to do hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars of business with any client for me to respect them or to feel like that relationship is valuable. In fact, oftentimes I trust personally, you know, the smaller clients. I mean, I just think it doesn't really matter how much business we do with them. Of course, it takes some time to develop the relationship, and it probably takes 1 or 2, I would say, relatively higher value sales just to get that comfort, because once you make a $20,000 sale or $30,000 sale, then you kind of understand how this client conducts themselves with the higher value, which is obviously a little bit higher risk merchandise, how they pay, and how they communicate throughout the whole process, and how much they negotiate, which is something that I personally don't love doing. But so yeah, I mean, to this client in particular, I would advise them to reach out, and it does take some time, obviously, to build the relationship. If we've never spoken to them before, I don't know how they do business, and they don't know how we do business. And every person and every company is quite different in that regard. Some people, it's a complete pleasure to deal with. I would say most people, and some it's really tough. And yeah, even if you make the sale, it's not a pleasant experience. And I think that's the important thing for us as a company. And we try and focus on the people that we enjoy working with, regardless of how big or small they are.
So what qualities on that note makes them the best to work with? So would it be the fact that they actively reach out to you when they send a request versus the ones who maybe just send a request electronically?
Yeah, I can take that. I don't think it has anything to do with the method of communication. I think it's more just the respect that they have for us. Do they treat us the way that they want to be treated? Do they respond promptly? Do they pay promptly? Are they pleasant to talk to on the phone? If there's any sort of issue, how do we handle it? Like if a stone's not available, for instance, do they get mad at us, or do they work with us and say, okay, like what else do you have that you could offer us? And it's just a way of conducting business. It's, do you treat us as a partner, or do they treat us as a kind of like a vending machine, where if something doesn't pop out, you just get upset, and if it pops out, then that's what you expect. Yeah. So I know there are people that I only text and email, and I meet them once a year at Vegas, and sometimes it's nothing like what I expect, or sometimes they look exactly like what I expect.
Got it. Thank you. So on the retail side, I'd like your opinion as well. None of these panelists said anything negative about suppliers, by the way. It's more about, I'd like the retailers to explain their experience when they are putting in requests for stones and how you do that. Like one of the questions that came up from one of my supplier friends was, how many suppliers do you ask for when you have a memo? And I think that also leads into, how do you work with your suppliers? How are you building that relationship? Jamie?
You go first. So usually when we have a call for a stone, we deal mostly with call stones. We want to have at least 3, maybe 4 stones, and it's certainly preferable to have one vendor, but oftentimes it's 2. Certainly don't want to have to go to 4 vendors, but sometimes that does happen. And really, I use the VDB platform a lot. I use it on my phone. I use it on my laptop. And I start really by, once I find some stones I look to see if they're from vendors that I know. And I'll always vendors that I know and I have established relationship with. And the second thing that I do is I reach out. I always start by email, just because it's the most efficient method, and to find out if they truly are available. So that's one of the things that is a little bit challenging, because I'd like to be able to look at the platform and just know automatically they're available, but they aren't always. So which is certainly understandable, because it's a moving target on an hourly momentary basis. So the first thing I do is reach out to find out if the stone is available, and certainly efficient communication is very helpful in terms of how quickly people get back to me. I definitely utilize not only my email but phone and text as well in different suppliers. And I'd rather not cast a wide net. I'd rather have a smaller group of suppliers, but sometimes it really depends on the call. And times are very competitive right now. So it's definitely not all about price, but at the same time, to fit into certain specs, and I always do my homework to find out what the online price is, to figure out what my retail price can be. So I kind of have to back into that to figure out where I have to be. And so that definitely does factor into it, but it's one factor.
Got it. And one of the things that I've heard a lot, I handle suppliers for VDB, so the majority of the time I am speaking to suppliers. But one of the things that I've seen quite a bit is an issue with what Jay mentioned, a stone not being available. So actually Jamie and Jay both mentioned that. And, retailers would be frustrated because that information isn't updated regularly, or if they consistently call for a stone and are always told it's not available. So, I think that's an area where we certainly can improve, but, I think that having both of you speak to how that works and, how you handle that and how you try to keep that relationship with your retailer. Or Jamie, if you call someone and they're frustrated and you're frustrated because you don't have the stone when they said it's available, I think that's an opportunity. Now I would like to hear how do you manage that?
Well, I think that I don't get as frustrated that it's not available unless I have, let's say, a set of, let's say it's 25 stones. I'm just pulling a number out of the air. Let's say I'm looking at sort of a list of 25 stones. And if I've emailed about 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 stones and they're all not available, then that can be frustrating. That's not usually the case though. You definitely get to get a sense of what vendors are keeping their feeds updated and what vendors are not. So you start dealing with vendors on a regular basis, you definitely get a sense for that. And the ones that are not, I just sort of X them off the list. The ones that are, I have to be understandable to the fact that I'm not the only one reaching out to them to inquire about the stone. So I may reach out to them today and they may have just had an inquiry, a half an hour ago for the same stone. Yes, it's unlikely, but it does happen. It's a big world and there's a lot of buyers. So my biggest frustration is not that it's not available. It's more that I don't get the return response in a timely manner.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if I may say, I will speak from the retailer perspective here. So the most important factor for a retailer is the lifetime value of a customer. So when you have a customer that make one purchase and you expect him over the next 5 years to come back to your business, make purchase, and maybe refer other customer, the value goes beyond that specific stones. And I think one of the most frustrating thing for many retailer, and maybe also on the VBD and maybe some other platform, there are many vendors, not all of them are based in the US, some of them are in different countries, and you don't always have visibility what is available to ship immediately or item that you may have to wait quite some time. And at the same token, I think the retailer, in some instances, just requesting memo stone because it doesn't cost them anything, not understanding that the dealer have to pay for shipping, for insurance, and all the admin costs. So I think the more we prospect the customers and ideally get maybe 3 stones that within those we know that we can meet the customer expectation, just to go and ask for 10 stones because it's easy to show 10. In fact, selling to a client when you're showing in general more than 2 to 3 stones, you're ending up not selling because there's too many choices and the client actually, I think, getting confused. So I think any dealer or wholesaler that is more responsive, that the stock is more updated, I think obviously will have better customer service and more people will communicate with them. But I think from the retailer, the responsibility, once a stone has been sold, and I think payment cannot be used for other things or being delayed, and also to let the dealer know, I've got your stone, my client look at it, he need another few days, and also communicate, because at the end of the day, the dealer, it's almost like a finance company with an immense amount of risk, and I think they also want to turn the stock in a very efficient manner. But at the end of the day, the retail customers or the online customer that I think will become more prominent with brick and mortar, need to go more digitally. It's very important to maintain a very fast flow to serve the client, because if you don't deliver to the client, they've got thousands of choices. So it is a partnership. And like I say, whoever is more diligent and more attentive, I think we'll have a better flow of business.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. I mean, clearly the takeaway here is communication, right? The more retailers can understand their customers, the better able they are to make wise choices when they reach out to their suppliers. And, Dotan, Jay, what do you do to really make sure that both of you have big companies? I'm sure you get so many requests. What do you do to actively ensure that you're prompt? I know you're updating inventory routinely. How do you manage all of that and make sure that your retailers are getting those quick responses?
Well, I think, listen, it's pretty simple. If you have an updated computer system or your whole system is, current, and today everything's digital. So the second the stone comes back into inventory, it automatically becomes guaranteed available. I mean, you know, in our company, if it says guaranteed available, you can swipe the credit card because I guarantee you'll get that stone. And we also have we have something in place where if it's not, then we promise something that's equal or better in value. And none of us want to, you know, give something that's better for, you know, a cheaper price. So you got to really, really watch out and make sure, you know, everyone's on point. So you know, when it comes down to it, it's all about the system, you know, how your system is. Now we've got 9 offices worldwide, and the system works. You know, people, you know, it's automated. What about you, Jay?
So
What do you guys do?
System every hour. So there is, I would say 99% of the time, things are available. It can only not be in case it's on hold for a customer, that it doesn't get automatically pulled off of our feeds if it's just on hold, because a lot of times those holds aren't followed through on. That is something that we could change. So far, we haven't had too many issues with it. Occasionally, very occasionally, we do have 2 clients that call for the same thing within a few minutes of each other. I guess the use case is if there's an end customer that sees something generally online and then they call, you know, a few retail stores for the same exact stone. Or oftentimes
they're shopping
overseas. We get requests from Hong Kong, you know, 3 or 4 companies asking for the same stone. You know, in which case we kind of have to make a judgment call. It's also not a position that I like being in. I prefer if there's just one person, there's no, you know, I'm not trying to feed people's offers off of each other. You know, I just prefer to have less fewer issues to deal with. We have enough things to worry about. But yeah, so we you know, and it takes a lot of manpower basically. That, you know, our whole model is service. You know, that we're in the service business. We service memo calls for the most part, and that's been my dad's approach since he started the company. We were always a service-oriented company, and so if somebody sends us a request at 6 p.m. or 6:30 p.m. for a package that needs to be shipped out, we ship it out. Or if they send us, you know, a hold request at 9 p.m., I log in through the VPN and I put it on hold, and I just tell the person it's on hold. So that is what, you know, why we have a business, I think, is because we service our local clients. And so we try and be, I mean, it's the communication point. I'm kind of surprised that it's so varied, because I feel like that's, you know, everyone's hungry for business, and it doesn't take a lot of work to basically just respond to somebody that wants to potentially buy something from you. That's how I look at it. So that's our job.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it entails a tremendous amount of work to make sure that all those requests are being met. I think that, you know, the question really is about more the exception, not the rule. I think most of our suppliers do a great job of making sure their inventory is updated and responding to requests. I really hope this is a reminder to our suppliers who could improve on that, how important it is, because it is about the relationship, right, that they have with that retailer. And, you know, it's like a bad date. The retailer makes the request and then they get stood up, and it's not a good experience, and they're not going to have a good relationship after that. So, and I think that causes a lot of frustration. So just a reminder, don't stand anybody up, right? Make sure your inventory is updated. You know, we want to make sure that the people who show up for the date, or who shows up for the date, all those things, I think in the communication are really important. On the retail side, yeah, sure, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry to jump in. I guess it's a question more for Jamie and Yair. You know, we were discussing this the other day. Sometimes the issue that I have is, you know, if somebody's asking for a few stones that go over their assigned credit limit, and I don't know exactly how to tell them. I might feel comfortable giving them 1 or 2 of this. Like Jamie, let's say you ask, and we've never met each other before, you know, we started thinking about this webinar. So if you reach out to us, we would run your credit, and let's just say, I'm sure your credit's vouchable, and we could, you know, people would vouch that we'd give you whatever you ask for. But let's say we determine that, you know, we feel comfortable extending $20,000 of credit, and all of a sudden you want 10 stones, each stone is $10,000, so $100,000 total. How would you like me to tell you that I can only, you know, I feel comfortable basically giving you 2 of those 10 stones? Because obviously I might say that 8 of them are not available or something, which may upset you.
Right, right.
I don't know how to approach that conversation really.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really good question. I think the most important thing is just to be honest. And a lot of times I've had vendors ask me, well, what is your credit limit in other places? And truthfully, I also am, some people use me as a person to call for credit for others. And they always ask me, well, how much credit do you extend them? So I think it'd be fair for you to say to me, well, I mean, you obviously are asking for credit references, but you could also ask me, well, with these references, what is your credit limit there? And, you know, let's say it's 50,000 and I'm asking you for 100,000, then, you know, that is sort of a way of you pointing out to me without saying to me that, listen, if you only have 50,000 everywhere else, then, you know, and you're a new retailer for us, then how could I possibly, you know, do you understand how risky it is for me to extend that much credit? So, you know, I think we just have to work together to figure that out. And, you know, maybe if my maximum is 50 somewhere and you say, well, I'm willing to go out on a limb up to $100,000. So would you be willing to accept this? Or, you know, just work with me to figure out what that number is, and whether it be something up front or, you know, whatever it is, because at the end of the day, maybe if I really need $100,000, I have to split it between 2 vendors. And that's maybe what I have to say to you is I have to come back and say, well, listen, I need $100,000, but if you're only coming with 50, then I'll get 50 from you and I'll get 50 from somebody else. And then you say to yourself, well, is that really what I want to do? And it probably is what you want to do, and that's probably fine. But I think that as a partnership together, we work that number up. So maybe it starts at 10, and then from 10, as I pay and pay promptly, then it moves from 10 to 20, from 20 to 30, and etc. And you know, if the business proceeds and I do more business with you and I'm paying promptly, then that number can move relatively quickly. But I think we just have to communicate and work together to figure out how it can benefit both of us.
Okay, I just want to make a point. So let's say that a retailer have a credit limit with your company for 50,000 and they want a stone that is, let's say, 100,000. So I think it's almost like you're asking for a home loan for the bank. If you can't prove that you are good for a $1 million home loan, they will simply say that currently you're not meeting those criteria. But I think it is up to you maybe to speak to the retailer and obviously to have a feel. Because remember, if somebody wants to do something which is not diligent or to commit a fraud or a non-payment culture, they can easily build a credit with you over 3 or 4 times and take you for a ride on the 5th time. So I think it's something that obviously you need to be an assessment. But I think from a retailer perspective, and also if you talk under the VBD platform, I think the quality of the images on the platform that the supplier is loading and as realistic as possible, it's almost easier to pre-qualify and get from the client a very good idea. If the stone that you see is the stone that you are going to get, how likely are you to buy it if I'm going to have it in a day or in 2 days? So I think that the images and communicate with the client is obviously more paramount. And I say on the credit issue, it's a risk that as a dealer, you obviously need someone to mitigate. And like Jamie says, I mean, you can phone 10 dealers and get 10 times 50,000 and you still have 500,000 stone with you, but it may not be the right solution. I think from a retailer, we have the responsibility not to call for stones that the likelihood to sell them is not very high because there is a lot of cost to the dealers and to the system. And at the same time, like I said, the better the visual that we can present to the client, the easier it is to get a commitment from the client. So we sell a lot of stone from a picture and from a video. And we tell the client, if it is what you see is what you get, are you happy to buy it? And in most cases, the client also paying a deposit because we do tell them it costs money to ship the stone, there's insurance involved. And I think the retailer also need to take active step to make sure that the selling rate or the selling through is much higher than just shipping goods back and forward. That's in my view on that.
Good points. Sure.
Okay.
So one of the other things when you're thinking about the credit as well and establishing that with a customer. So this goes back to a conversation with Jay, but Dotan, of course, answer as well. You know, how you decide how you work with someone to build up their credit, and not just the logistics, but when you're speaking to someone who's just starting out and they're asking for a lot more than they have historically, you know, walking them through those steps. So, you know, Jamie went through things that sound reasonable and understanding of how to build credit. But I think, to me, it sounds like it's important that when a supplier is having that conversation with a retailer and saying, okay, this is the credit lines you have with others, this is what you're asking from us. These are the things that need to happen so that I can feel comfortable giving you $100,000 worth of stones instead of the 50,000 that I'm currently giving you. You know, I think guiding them. And so again, I think that's also about communication and relationship building between the two. Dotan, you know, when you're talking to a customer and they're asking you for a lot more, what do you say to them? I mean, a little bit, we talked yesterday about asking for a little skin in the game, like they're asking for a lot. How do you work with them?
We usually, it depends on the person and, you know, and how his references are around. But if he's really, really fresh and brand new, we would usually ask for him to pay for it up front, and then build into it. You know, our kind of rule of thumb is, you know, we will invest, we will give you credit. We will give you all the profit that we've made on you. So in other words, if I make, I don't know, $5,000, $10,000 profit within time, I'm willing to give him all of it on credit with a multiple. So if we start off, you know, the first time he'll buy a $10,000 item, you know, I'll start to extend credit to him, and then second, third, fourth, and he'll build up into it. But there's no way we can give it to him on the first shot. On one hand. On the other hand, you know, let's say up to 5 or 10,000, you know, which contradicts what I'm saying, but up to 5 to 10,000, we would usually give everyone, because you know we do want to start doing business. We do want, you know, if he sounds right, we'll give you 5 to 10. Anything over 5 to 10 is when we start to, you know, ask for, or even if he would send half the money in, you know. But when it comes down to it, we want to make customers. We're here to support them. We are the bank. You can say that, you know, we're giving a money, or you're giving merchandise, but at the end of the day, you are the bank. And, you know, if we don't extend the credit, we're not going to make money. You know, if the bank doesn't get out a loan, it's not doing anything. Okay. So yeah, we're looking to do it, but we got to do it right. And today, you know, interest is low, so profit is low, and you can't make too many mistakes. And then what we were talking about yesterday, if it's going to be a really high amount, then we would actually ask for either half or payment, you know, upfront, and we would give him even 60 days to return it, because it's irrelevant when he wants to return it. You know, it's like it's still a memo call, but we would ask for the security up front, you know. And actually, in today's world, even sometimes when you call up credit, if you don't feel comfortable, better off not to give it, because, you know, you never know what's going to happen. So it's all about your gut feeling, you know. But you got to try and make the business. You always have to try and create that business. So that's my. What about you?
Yeah, no, I'd agree a lot with what Dotan says. I think it's much more an art than a science, and I think that you know, I've been doing this for a few years, not even that long, but you can. I mean, you can get a sense basically on how like upfront and honest the person calling in is. I think for me, what helps is when clients, you know, that I don't have necessarily have a rapport with, when they share, you know, what the appointment is, or how many stones they're bringing in. Say, okay, my client's coming in on Thursday. If they don't, you know, pull the trigger, or if they don't ask me to hold it, I'll give it back to you Thursday evening. Can I pick it up from you on Wednesday? Helps me a lot, 'cause, you know, it's not just them taking it for granted that I'm just going to give them the stone and then forget about it. And it's not even like I even know when to follow up with them, or I know that they'll follow up with me. So I guess it just goes back to the general theme of over communicating rather than under communicating. Particularly, I think the way that Dotan framed it is to think of diamond dealers kind of as the bank. How would you treat the bank? People are kind of scared of banks. I know I'm sort of scared of our bank, and so we're like friendly bankers. Hopefully.
Friendly
Yeah,
bakers.
I use a lot of smiley faces in my emails to people. So, yeah, that's what I would say.
Great,
What else?
great. Amy, did you have something else that you wanted to share?
Well, kind of unrelated, but I want to go back to what Yair said, which is I cannot stress the importance enough the importance of the photos and the videos. And he's absolutely right that we can pre-qualify customers and then have to have less stones if we're able to use the VDB platform the way to its, sort of highest ability, which is to create favorites, to create a collection, to send it to a customer to pre-qualify. They see the videos, they see the photos, they see the specs, they can see the certs, and we can potentially pre-qualify and only need one stone. But if your photo and your video isn't there, then unfortunately it might not be an option when we do it that way. And I think, especially in today's pandemic, that is something I'm definitely using. I used it last week, the last 2 weeks, and made a sale yesterday. I did have to bring in more than one stone, but honestly, I'll say they were looking at a stone at Blue Nile, and they even came to me and said, "Would you just do the setting?" And I asked them to tell me what stone were they looking at, and I was able to go on and look at it, and I didn't get the same stone. But because of the VDP platform and being able to use the favorites and sending her photos and videos, I was able to, in the long run, I was able to make that sale. So it is really, really critical to have that information up on the platform.
Wonderful.
On the other hand, I have something to say about that also. Usually, like good salesmen, they'll hoard in goods because they might not show it, but they have to have it on, in as backup. Now, a lot of these goods that are like in the SI2, SI1 and lower, the images sometimes they don't even want to show the image because it's going to be a black center now. Remember, if you're showing it to them on an iPad, the stone becomes a 17-inch screen or 15-inch screen, and it's huge and it's black and it's right in the center, and they don't even want to call it in. So some of the retailers are really hesitant. They're looking at it because they understand the industry, but they don't really want to show it to the consumer because they might scare them off, So I still think that the fact that the retailers will order in 5, 6, 7 stones, you can't get rid of that. And especially, oops, I lost you guys. Could you hear me? Yeah, good. So especially the ones that are not extreme professionals, because a lot of these retail stores, they turn the salesman. They're not. It's not always the extreme professional guy there. So they will continue to order them, and you really have to try to understand, the retailer when he's ordering 3 or 4 or 5 stones. It doesn't really, for me personally, it doesn't bother me. The best stone will win, and it doesn't. I'm just saying it doesn't. I have no issues with it. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. Yair, you were smiling. What does that mean?
He doesn't like it. I know he doesn't. I don't like it. I personally understand him. I can feel him. But there's a reality of things, and
Sure.
that's how it is.
Yeah.
I mean.
So, but if you're a retailer that's selling based on price, or you're online that's selling based on price, I think you have the choice to show your client the image or not to show your client the image. But if you want, for example, to go in the brick and mortar stores and compete against Blue Nile or James Allen or any of the online retailer, and you have the choice to choose a much better looking stone, then you can show the client, here is a stone which is SI1, there's a black in the middle, and it's got maybe
Exactly.
a fluorescent. Here is a stone. So as a retailer, based on your client and how you prospect the client, you can choose what to show them. But I think it's important to have the ability to show them an image if we want to show them, because we normally show a client a very low quality cut and a low grade compared to an excellent cut. And we explain to the client, you may pay less money now, but for the rest of your life, you're going to have an uglier stone compared to a best looking stone. So you need to give the retailer the choice. And again, if you just sell on price online or on Amazon and you want to buy the cheapest stone, so don't bother to put a photo. But I really think, so one point that I want to bring up that I think is important if you discuss banking and all of that, in a bank, you have a relationship manager, you've got a credit department or accounting. So I think to maintain good relationship with the retailer, I think almost once need to separate the credit check or the account department from the salespeople, because you don't want the retailer to get upset with the salespeople because you can't give him credit. It's always better to say, our credit department allows to supply you up to X amount, and maybe you take away any maybe hard feeling between the retailer and the salesperson that really want to sell.
I have just in response to that, I've thought about that for our company, and we used to operate like that. I found it a little bit easier and more transparent to just be upfront with our customers if there's an issue with the credit limit. I think it's easier from the customer's perspective to just have one relationship manager that understands the account and understands, even if there's one invoice that instead of the payment on 30 days, they paid in 45 days and there was some extenuating circumstance, but we didn't revise the invoice internally. Only the salesperson would understand that. The credit department might think they're a delinquent account. They're a late payer. Exactly. But the salesperson would know that, there was one issue and it's a good account that we want to, I think that's kind of the businesses that it is. They're mostly family businesses and they're small prizes. You can take certain judgment calls and it's so reputation based and history based that what kind of people are.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I got your point. Yeah.
That's my opinion. I don't know. I wonder what other people think.
No, that's 100%. And I'll tell you another thing to the retailers, they shouldn't get irritated or, mad if we can't give them the credit. They should actually try and be more understanding because, if the retailer understands that the supplier is really trying to do the business, but he can't, they have to, then there's something mutual about it, and then we can each help each other to do it. And like I said in the beginning, if you can't afford it, then you might not be in the right business. It's not everyone can do everything. So if you're asking us to extend this crazy amount of credit, and then getting irritated and not understanding why, then the issue might be on your side. You understand? Because we really want to do the business. There's rules, regulations, there's a system that we try to abide. And that's why we've also been in business for 50 to 100 years, because we've been following those rules, and we're not doing unintelligent things that others might be doing. So it's just we should stay. What I'm trying to say is it should be mutually understood that we're both trying, and you shouldn't get mad. You should actually flow with it.
Well, it sounds like definitely communication and having a respect for the position the other is in. And to your point, Dotan, if someone's asking for something that seems out of line, communicating with them and saying, this is what needs to happen in order for you to get there. This is what our other customers have done in order to get this kind of credit limit. And, that's reasonable. That sounds very.
And it goes back to what Jay was saying, that no more credit department, with this, the salesman and the person. And because when you do a credit department, it's even more insulting to some of them, because it's like, you don't even know who I am. But if the salesman is communicating it direct, don't get insulted. Work with us. Make it happen. We want to make it happen.
Right? You're managing that relationship, and I think that's
exactly.
The key.
Exactly.
I want to work with you. This is what I can do. I'm not ready to take you home to the parents yet. Can we go on a few more dates and do this?
Exactly. What you said is a perfect analogy. That's a perfect analogy. We got to do a couple of dates before,
Yeah.
I get, every call that comes into our office, I get tempted to, or I want to give that person those goods. Like Dotan was saying before, they don't do anything just sitting in our office. I wish, 75% of the goods were out on memo all the time.
Exactly.
So, the times when we get stuck or when we get into bad situations, or when we get too eager to make the sale and we do kind of crazy things that we go against our. But for, in the US, I would say 99% of the time, things are good, people are good. Worst case scenario, an invoice gets paid a little bit late, but that 1% can be really painful. But by and large, most people over here that are in the business for more than a few years are great to work with.
Well, this has gone by really quickly. We are already just over the 40 minutes. So we have 20 questions pending. So I'd like to dive into those. The first one I have is from Praveen in Chicago. Other than the basics of memo and sending the memo, giving terms to build up the ring or whatever, what is the most beneficial thing a supplier can do in terms of relationship building?
Who's first?
Hey,
I would say answer emails quickly and make sure your feed is accurate.
So my thing, I agree with her 100%. You got to make sure that the whole call business today is how fast you respond. And that's why we have our systems, our internet, our apps, our VDB, because we want to respond ASAP. So if you set up, if you respond extremely fast, and and ship on time, you're good. You're there.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think for VBD, especially for the US retailer, there need to be maybe a clear indication what goods are available in the US compared to what goods are overseas. But there's obviously a delay time and more logistic to supply to the retailer in a faster manner. So I think that separation can be improved from the retailer perspective.
That actually goes into the next question I have from Sonu. How do retailers feel about certain suppliers who put USA location on their stones, but in actuality, those stones are overseas? So I think it's
horrible. Horrible.
Yeah, not good. Not good.
Shouldn't do that.
Yeah, not good because, generally speaking, there's shipping costs, and especially if there's going to be any sort of duty that's placed on it. I almost always filter to stones located in the United States. And I haven't had it happen very often, but I did just have it happen once in the last couple of weeks. And a stone that was posted as being in the United States and was shipped to me from outside the United States. And I was not happy when I got it. And I was absolutely not planning on paying to ship it back out of the country. So
right. That's the point. It's not just about getting it and there being a delay. It's the potential of having to ship.
However, I will say in his defense, when I returned it, I did ship it back into the U.S. So in a certain way, it was on him that he shipped it to me from outside the country, and I didn't so far, knock on wood, I haven't had to pay for duties, etc. So in that particular case, it all has worked out fine.
Okay.
Yeah, what I want to say is to all the actual suppliers, when you're misleading your retailer, the reason why they're doing this is because they want to get the phone call. Okay, so you say, okay, my goods are here, and you want to get the phone call. But then when you finally get the phone call and it turns out to be you're misleading them, they don't even want to speak to you. So it's not right. You shouldn't lie from day one. It's not, you guys got to treat it. I mean, the location is just as important as the price. You can't tell someone something like the stone will cost you $1,000, and when he calls in, you go, oh, that's going to be $1,200 now. You would never do that because you just get hung up on. So you got to treat the location in today's world. In today's world with this online and this whole thing, everything needs to be real. You can't lie about this stuff. You can't switch that out because it's not going to go for you. It's just going to go against you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Right. Next question from Kevin in Canada. Are there expectations on both the retailer and supplier end when it comes to how long one would need to hold the stone on memo for? Can there be upfront days needed?
Could you say that again? Could you repeat that? I missed the question.
Are there expectations on both the retailer and supplier side when it comes to how long one would need to hold the stone on memo for?
I mean, I can answer that. Our standard terms are 5 business days, but again, it's always a conversation. I'm not calling someone on the 5th day and then subsequently I'm not following up with them every single day. But you know, I think generally across the industry, my impression is that the standard terms are 1 week, 5 business days, 1 week. You guys can your terms are different, but that's what I ideally hope. I hope that all memos are wrapped up in a week. But if it takes longer, it takes longer. Obviously, a lot of calls. Customer comes in once, they want to deliberate, they come in the next weekend, et cetera. And you know, I don't expect you guys to, clients to ship things back and then I send it back. It's fine. If I send it to you once, I trust you to hold it for another 10 days or so as well.
Yeah, I think a week is reasonable, but I do have to say that the larger the stone, the longer it takes sometimes to make a decision. But that doesn't mean that we should, extend it from 1 week to 2 weeks. It really means that we need to set up the expectation with the consumer. And if we need it for a couple of extra days, again, the communication needs to be very clear. And it's really on us to communicate back to the supplier to say, listen, I have a buyer, they're very interested. But again, you have to be honest. If the buyer just hasn't shown up, forget it. But if the buyer's come, the buyer's seen it, and they, have a real interest in it, then let the supplier know. I'd like to keep it an extra 5 days. Whatever it is, as long as it's not a month, it should be reasonable. But we also, I think it's a matter of educating our consumers as well.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with her 100%, meaning if the person, if the retailer had the time to call you up, look for you, and then finally get the stone, all they need to do is communicate back and tell us what's happening. Because between, all of us, if he needs it also for a month, like you said, not a month, but if he needs it for a month, he knows it's a very important customer and he's flying in to see it. And the customer decided that he doesn't want to come this week and the following, it's totally fine. You just need to communicate with the supplier and tell him what's happening. And I'm sure that the supplier won't mind, And if it's mutual business. They just need to communicate.
Right. Communication.
Yep.
Right. The next question from Praveen again for Jamie and Yair. When searching for diamonds on VDB, are you searching for price only, or do you care about the material of the diamond? Which way do you lean?
Interesting
Okay.
question.
I think first of all, it's depend on your customer. So if you know your customer, if it's a client that looking for a specific quality cut or specific character that make a diamond, they will try to find the best match. Like I said, some client may just go for a price. Some client will go for a certain specification. Some will have some requirement. So I think it is about that. And this is where the more information and images and that, I think it's quite important. And we all know that it's never about the price. It's more about the value that you can communicate to the client based on his set of own values. So, yeah.
Yeah. So I would answer that price is one factor, but it's one factor among many. And I definitely don't search just for price.
Okay, great. Next question from Kevin. Do retailers appreciate another price point for quicker payments? Different price lines based on payment terms?
Go ahead, Yair. Go ahead.
Well, I'm not sure who you're asking, but obviously, if you are buying goods and you're paying for them, the price will be different than you having the goods on memo, because then the supplier getting paid immediately. So it's very common to have maybe 2 to 3 point difference, which may be 7-8% difference in some cases if you buy a stone compared to having a stone of memo, because there is the finance cost, there's the shipping cost, insurance cost. And yeah, so I think that's common. And the discount is obviously based on the dealer and the negotiation that will take place.
But it's, I mean, you would say that it's reasonable. So if someone sees a price, for example, on VDB, a retailer sees a stone at a price, but they want to go on Memo, would it be reasonable for them to believe that the price is going to be an extra 2% because they're taking it out on Memo?
No, I think the price that you see on VBD, because it's a price that's serving the industry, it is reasonable for the retailer to look at that price as the memo price on VBD. But if you have to buy the stone, maybe you can negotiate 1 or 2 points or 3 points, depending on the stone. But I think the price you see on VBD, the retailer will take it as a memo price. This is my
As a
view.
short-term memo, as for call memo.
Yeah.
See, in my opinion, there is no more idea of memo price and buying price. It's, you know, if you want to sell the goods, you got to be sharp, and the memo price is the buying price usually, because, you know, that's the way. Well, at least in our company, that's what's happened. You know, we're sharp. We want to make the sale. If you're shipping him the stone, it's memo. What does it matter if it's a 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, 5 day? It's still a memo call. You know, he didn't come to the office, look at the goods, buy them, and walk away, you know, and argue it. It's a memo call. Second of all, I don't think anyone's looking on VDB and looking to just straight up buy merchandise. You know, or at least that I've never experienced that. Most of these aggregators and platforms are used for a memo call. You know, now it could be that the day it comes in, the customer came, he saw it, he made the sale, and then he's going to call back and say, listen, I want to buy this for inventory. But it was still a memo call. You know, it's 99.9% a memo call. You know, if you're a buyer, if you're a true buyer, you're probably flying out and purchasing it, you know, out there, or you would be on a different type of platform than VDB, or, you know, than the aggregators. You know, you would be in an Indian website, or in auction platforms, and that's where you're buying it. You know, where you're bidding and whatnot, and you close the price before you even see the stone. So that's my opinion. It's a memo price. It's the final price. It's the price that you know that we want to make, and you know, it's usually it can go 1 or 2 points from here to here, but that's just as a courtesy. It's not because you're really discounting the stone. You're just, you know, you're kicking in, you're including the shipping or giving them a courtesy discount. You know, a couple $100. Anything you think different, Jay?
Yeah, look, I do think it's a different use case if you ship the guy a stone. I mean, for me, you know, very few people come to our office and buy goods. Maybe that's different for you, but you know, if I ship someone something and they just want to look at it, inspect it, and then confirm, want to pick it up, take it back to our office and confirm it. It's a different use case than if someone picks up a stone, presents it to their client. It takes a few days, and then they want to negotiate and wrap up the sale, or hopefully not negotiate and just confirm the stone sold. You know, ideally, I wish that you know, if somebody took things on memo, they respect the price, that we have it listed. Obviously, it doesn't usually, or I shouldn't say it doesn't usually work like that, but oftentimes there's some amount of negotiation that goes into it. But yeah, I think if somebody just wants to confirm it based on paper and then we ship it out to them basically on an invoice condition inspection, that's how we buy goods. On an invoice condition inspection, just one-time viewing.
Exactly.
That's
so
different than.
So you respond within a couple of hours.
5 minutes
of receiving it. Exactly.
Yeah, I open the package, take a quick look, and then say yay or nay.
Right. So, but you already purchased the goods. You pre-purchased them already, right?
Yeah.
And then you're just inspecting to make sure that it is what it is, right?
Correct.
Okay. But that's when you purchase the goods. But most of when you're selling the goods, okay, when you're getting calls, that how much in percent does that happen? You know, you're making a straight sale. It's already done. I mean, it's does it happen?
It's a very low percentage, probably single digit.
Okay. Exactly. That's why I'm saying it's all memo.
Yeah.
You give them the best price. You give them the best service. You know, and if you're going to discount, it's probably going to be a courtesy discount, you know, just to show some love.
Gotta show them some love.
All right, next question. How do you deal with retailers? So this goes back to the memo discussion. retailers who want stones on memo and don't make an effort to show the stones in a timely manner, let's say longer than 10 days, and then they're not willing to pay for return shipping back to the supplier.
Frustrating. It's frustrating. Yeah, I know. It's frustrating. Someone, you know, has the stone for 10 days and they send it back, and you know, the times oftentimes I don't even know when they haven't shown the stone, except for when the stone comes back damaged. And then we call them, you know, not oftentimes, but sometimes the culet gets chipped. And then we called up and say, look, the culet got chipped. And they say, didn't even show the stone. It's like, first off, you had it for 10 days. What was it doing there for 10 days? If you didn't, did the customer just keep on delaying the appointment? And second off, how did the culet get chipped? Because we check our stones before we send them out. So anyways, look, it's a rare case, but I usually don't even know if they've shown it or not shown it. I mean, there's no way for me to know that. But then they should pay the shipping. When I bring in stones on memo, I usually pay both ways shipping, or at least one way shipping.
Right.
Usually both ways. I offer the people to pay both ways shipping. Because there's no reason why somebody should have to pay expenses for something that I wanted to show.
So how do you confirm that the stone, even if the client pay for the shipping, how do you confirm that they pay for the insurance? Because otherwise, if they don't, you're obviously at risk.
But that's on them, right? Yeah. If they send the shipment back to us and it gets lost, they're still responsible for those goods. You can track that it never reached our office.
No, sure.
Right.
Yeah.
That's, yeah. To answer what Jay is saying, it's just what we call cost of doing business. So, if he pays, if he chipped, he chipped. We'll ask, we'll explain nicely that this is the situation. Hopefully we can resolve it. And if we don't, on the next shipment, we already understand, the situation. And, it's like I said, cost of doing business. So if he does sell the stone, he might not get that extra small discount, that love that he would give someone else, because it's making up for the last time's shipment. And, it's ongoing. And some people are nicer than others, and some people are, a little bit more adamant than others. And it's cost of doing business. We accept it. Do we like it? No. But do we accept it? Yeah, you have to accept it. What are you going to do,
Well, it's going to damage your relationship with your supplier if you do that.
100%. I agree. But you know what? You got to cater to everyone. You got to try your best to do business with everyone. And yeah, but everything gets written down. Everything is remembered. And when you treat people nicely, it's going to come back. It's going to come back. And if you treat people like you shouldn't, then it's going to also come back. I mean, it is what it is. Back to what like we were talking about yesterday. You get a call for a stone from two people in a very close time. Who wins? Who gets it? Okay. Well, the one who paid the shipping last, the one who took care of it. I mean, we say that the first one wins. So if you won the race, you were the first one who calls. You 99.9%, you're going to get that stone because you were first in line. But if you don't pay for shipping and you don't want to pay for the return shipping, and you're that type of customer that maybe chipped the culet and you see they didn't chip it, yeah, you're not going to get the stone next time. You lose. So it's better to be on the supplier's better side than to be on their bad side, because remember, as a supplier, you guys can't do the business if we don't supply, and we can't do the business if we don't have you guys as retailers. So back to, it comes back to just mutual respect and, communicating with each other on a proper way.
Yeah, I should say these are like the fringe cases, right? They're the vast minority. I think in general, I do feel like most retailers view suppliers as partners, and
Exactly.
and we do need the retailers as well to make sales. I can't make retail sales.
But I must say, Karen, so the two suppliers that you chose for the panel are considered an exemplary suppliers. So they understand customer service, they understand the business, they understand the US market. There are a lot of other suppliers on VBD or in the market that maybe don't give that level of service, or maybe not listing the stone properly. And I think the problem is more with them. I think with MID and Dyson, like I say, there's not really any problem. In fact, they are, like I say, an example for a best-in-class supplier. So, but you need also to discuss a supplier that potentially is not at the same level and still on the platform, and maybe VBD need to potentially do some vetting or some policing to make sure that the quality of the supplier meeting a certain standard to help the retailer to do a faster business in a way.
Well, I look at it as educating. So just how we discussed, if a retailer approaches one of the suppliers here and is asking for a line of credit, just doesn't seem in line with where that retailer is right now. So the same thing, if I see that retailer is frustrated because they call the company and they've not gotten responses, they're not getting the response, right? They're not showing up on the date. They're standing them up. I don't see it as an opportunity to chastise. We're all grown-ups here. We're professionals. We should be. I want to have that conversation again, like, this is what this platform does. This is the benefit of showing up, reaching out, building a relationship. And if you're not answering calls, if you're not holding up your end of the deal, then that's damaging that relationship. And ultimately, that's going to be damaging to your business. You know, VDB provides an opportunity to connect the retailers and the suppliers and give you an opportunity to go on those dates, right, and build that relationship. So if I see a supplier isn't doing that, then I want to talk to them and understand why and make sure they get why they're on the platform, and that they appreciate the value and try to come up with solutions, right? I don't want to lose people. I would rather educate people on better practices and help them understand that they are ultimately costing themselves business, whether that's a retailer who's not treating a supplier fairly because they're not returning goods when they should, or they're shipping them, whatever, they're not paying for the shipping, whatever misbehaving it is. You know, ultimately that's costing that person money, because, you know, this is a relationship business, and the more trust you get, the higher the credit limits, the more synergy you have to do business. And, you know, I don't want to get into ethics in the industry, but in general, you know, this is such a trust business, and I find that so interesting about it. And if you're not trustworthy, you're not going to get what you want every time. So you know, that's why I'm doing this, is because I see it as an opportunity for us to understand what are those best practices, and identifying those behaviors that are less than ideal, so we can better communicate. And honestly, that's going to help everyone's business.
There's a lot of platforms that at the time put up rating systems. In other words, you know, they had, you can rate each other, you know, like on Amazon or whatnot. And in the diamond industry, they tried to do that on some platforms, but I don't think it became that successful, because you need the people to actually do it, to actually, you know, rate. Now, you know, in our industry, it's like the person can be the most, someone you wouldn't want to be his friend, but then he creates 2 or 3 good sales for you, and you'll still love him, and you'll still ship him again, and he won't pay the shipping, but you'll do it again and again, and you're never ever gonna rate him poorly, because you want him to come back, you know. And at the end of the day, so you know, you're looking at, so he didn't pay the shipping. And then there's some customers that are just that type of customer, like we said before, and you still won't rate them bad, because that's our industry, you know. I mean, it's a small industry, everyone knows each other, and so the rating doesn't really work. It's just making phone calls and or doing business and figuring out who's who, you know.
Yeah.
Which goes back to our credit, you know. Like, it's the same thing that we said before, you know. You start someplace and you build into it slowly, you know. Same thing. And you'll see if he's paying the shipping, if he's nice, if he asks for the merchandise back, how nice he is, you know. If it's mutual, then you both grow.
I actually feel like we have the best kind of rating system just with the reference check, you know, that we have going on. The New York community, New York dealer communities is pretty closely knit. Everyone is super, super helpful. I personally, I like getting references. Getting references, you know, it's just an opportunity to talk to other people and just connect
Sure.
with them. Getting references, an opportunity to help out. It's just feels good to share, you know, return the favor, pay it forward. Because we also ask people all day long, and we get this information from other people all day long. So yeah, I wouldn't even really want to automate it myself, though. Sometimes the ratings help a little bit, but without the color around
Right.
the kind of person someone
Right.
is, I don't think it would be nearly as helpful.
Correct.
All right, so next question. How do suppliers feel about retailers that have to pay brands first over paying diamond suppliers?
You mean like Rolex dealers? We used to think like, you know, that if he's a Rolex dealer, he's good credit. But usually he is good credit, you know, but it could be that he's paying the brands before he's paying anyone else. Again, just part of our business. That will continue to happen, and you can't stop it. You can't stop it. It will just
So what's the question? What do we think
happen.
about it? Obviously, it's not good if you know, if our payments are getting delayed. But yeah, I agree with Dotan. It's part of the business, and
It's part of the
usually
business.
the references. If somebody's a late payer, the references say that, or one or two experiences.
Yeah.
You know.
Right. What does JBT mean to suppliers today?
The big fat red book.
You can-
I don't think.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Dotan.
I think it's a starting point that everyone looks at and sees, like, you know, it's the first thing. It's the first thing you go to see who the person is. Like, does he exist? Okay. Does he have a store? How long the business has been in there for? And if anybody else is complaining. Okay. Because if you're rated poorly in JBT, that means it's poor, you know, because till people do that, it takes time. So it's the first thing, it's the first place to go to, you know, to see, it's your research. And then after that, you start doing your references. Could you base your credit or your thoughts just because of the book? No, you still have to do your checking. But it's kind of like, you know, it's background check. It's the first step of a background check. Go on, Jay. Sorry for cutting you out.
No, I think you said most of what I was going to say. It doesn't mean much to me. I think, you know, I used to feel like when I first entered the industry, if the company had like retail store employees, it was a good thing. Now I really don't care if they have 80 or if they have 2. It really has no reflection on their, you know, how good of a partner or bad of a partner they would be.
Right.
Let's see. We also want to know which shipping process is easier and convenient for each country.
Wait, I didn't catch that. I missed part of that. Sorry.
We also want to know which shipping process is easier and convenient for each country.
Go for it.
Yeah, I think this question is referencing international shipments. So, you know, we use whichever one is pretty much cheaper between Brinks, Malkamit, and Ferrari. And then for lower values, we sometimes ship FedEx. If that's the question was asking.
Same thing. We ship via Brinks and FedEx, and whichever is cheaper. You know, whichever cheaper and insured. It's not. Sometimes these companies are not willing to insure in certain places, residential, non-residential, on and on. So as long as it's insured and we'll use any company.
I want to ask a question maybe to the suppliers, and I'm not sure if Darson, if you have it, I know that MID have it. You do have a retailer feed that can feed into a retailer website, so you can feed your stock. When you do it, what is the portion of the sales that you see currently happening online from your feed versus
That's
the memo?
a great question. That's a great question. See, so could I answer that, Jay? Do you mind? So what happens? No, I'm starting to talk. I just keep cutting in. So what happens is these online with jewelry or with high ticket items or with anything that's doesn't have like a stock number or a model number, you know, like an iPhone. You never know where it's coming from. So you know, it could be the customer came and saw it on a different website, and then he came to your website, and then he's researching back and forth, and at the end he calls and the sale's made. So was it made because of online? Was it made because of this? You never know. Are they swiping credit cards? Most of the stores don't even have that capability to swipe the credit card. And most of these brick and mortar stores don't even want to swipe the credit card. They want you to come in. They want you to build that relationship, because remember, if you can come in, you're probably going to bring in, you know, your child or the grandmother or, you know, the family business. The whole family eventually can buy from that store, like these mom and pop places. So, and if I understand the question properly, you never know where it's coming from, but you have to have the online presence just to compete, just to be on the map. Because if you don't, you're not there. You've disappeared. You know. So we feed as much as we can, but you can, anyone who's giving you an exact number of how much is coming, it's not going to make sense, because, you know, you can be feeding 500 websites, but you're only getting 2 or 3 real sales. I mean, credit card, in other words, all the way through, you know, automation, like Amazon, okay, where you put the credit card down, you press checkout, and you got it. So you're saying, well, this doesn't really make sense. But that's not true, like I said, you know, because it's the online presence, and you're going to get the phone call. You know, it's the same way. It's the same way with my website or Jay's website or all these, you know, supplier websites. Not necessarily do they buy it online, but they'll call you up. Okay, so they saw it on VDB, and then they went back to your website, and then they would go back to VDB, and then they decide to make the deal with you. Or let me give you another example. If you don't have a website, that's like, okay, so here. Somebody calls me up, he wants credit, right? He says he's a Rolex dealer, he's this. When you go to his website, that website gives you some type of feeling about the person. Now, it could be total fraud, but it gives you an initial feeling. So if his website is something from like 15 years ago, and you're going to feel queasy, you're going to say, hey, you know, but if he's got a beautiful website with, you follow what I'm saying? It's part of the brand, and that's why you should have stones online.
Yeah, my question was, if you compare a retailer that have a direct diamond feed from you to their stock offering, do you see them selling more diamond compared to a retailer that doesn't have a website or doesn't have the feed on the website?
Yes, you are going to see the people who have feeds selling more than the ones that have nothing. Yes. Are they selling from your feed? I can't answer that, but they are selling more product.
I don't know, Yair, if it's really like causation or correlation, right? Like it could just be that the more retailers have feeds or have websites to begin with. It's not necessarily that the sites or the diamond feed is driving the business. They were just successful to begin with.
Exactly.
It's a really hard question for me to even, you know, take a guess at. I don't, because again, like Dotan said, maybe they see the stone somewhere. I don't know where they saw it. They just call us and say they want our memo, so we write them a memo. Yeah.
I think this goes to the point of this whole matchmaker concept. The idea of technology isn't about how it divides us or separates us. It's remembering that the technology has to function in a way that enables us to interact better. So when you're talking about the website for retailers and, you know, having a feed from Dyson or MID on a retailer's site, that retail site should really tell a story about that retailer and should prompt someone when they're at home looking on the website to say, you know what, yeah, I'd love to go in. It is part of branding. So again, I think that sometimes people get confused about, well, technology is important, I need to do it. There's, you know, VDB, you know, we offer different products, websites, and so forth. but I think it's really important to know, why do you need the technology and what are you doing with it? You know, you're not getting an A just for having a website. What are you doing with the website and what is the intent? And, you know, getting on a platform, just dumping inventory on a platform like VDB isn't enough. What are you going to do with it? Are you going to be responding to requests and all those things timely?
Another thing I was going to tell you is like, I would love it that everyone has a direct feed with me. But in reality, when they go with a direct feed with an aggregator, it's always better. And that's because if you're going with only me, or with one supplier, he will never have everything, okay? And if somebody comes into your store, you cannot just run out of milk. You got to have milk. You know, you got to have the product. So if you go with an aggregator, for instance, you know, because we're on VDB, but with VDB, you can pick 3 or 4 or 5 of your good vendors, and then you've got a selection. You know, I mean, it could be that I ran out of a half a carat ISI1. It could be, you know, it was a great month and I don't have any more. So somebody else can supply that half a carat. You understand? You cannot, but you pay big money and for people to come to your website, okay, and then or to come to your store. Now you already got him in the door. He's in your website. And you don't have a half carat. You know, he's going to go to your competition who's got it and he's going to buy it. So going with an aggregator rather than going with the direct feed, I mean, for me, the direct feed is wonderful, but I always tell my customers, you should go with an aggregator. Now it's my job and Jay's job and are the suppliers to have the best value, you know, and the best service and the best whatnot, so that a retailer will continue to work with you and actually would prefer to sell your goods. That's your job. But he must have a selection just to be there, just to exist. You understand? So direct feed is good, but aggregator is better, even though it goes against me.
Yeah, so I think VBD as an aggregator, obviously if they have the solution, but today with traveling, that's coming to a standstill, and I think future traveling also will be much less than before. I think the more retailer that will have a site and somewhere aggregator, it will obviously help the entire industry to flow better
100%.
and to reach more
100%.
clients. So yeah, it's a must to have today rather than want to have, because things have changed.
Well, it was a must. It was a must already 10 years ago, but today it's becoming, especially with this time, it's becoming essential.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so getting back to questions. By the way, we have 30 open questions right now, so quite a few. And we are over time, but I'd like to try to get a couple different questions up, going through the list here.
We can also do a part 2, you know?
See, and you guys were worried about this open format.
Yeah, it's fine.
How do retailers feel about zoomed in image videos that are the current trend? Are they too much? And do they like more naked eye video images? I get asked this a lot when I'm talking to my suppliers about getting the images up.
Mm-hmm. Jay.
So Jamie?
I think it's more for the retailers. Yeah, Jamie, why don't you go ahead?
I mean, you know, you have to understand that they are zoomed in, and you know, but at the same time, they're looking online, they're seeing all these zoomed in photographs. Again, it's about the consumer and helping them to understand, you know, the way it looks to the naked eye. But you know, being that we are talking about a matchmaker service, at the same time, you know, we spoke earlier about, you know, SI1 goods. I mean, some SI1 goods have black in them, some don't. So, you know, being able to see the person that you're wanting to go on a date with up close, you know, might not be such a bad idea.
When you see the fuzzy zoomed out photos, it's usually not a good sign.
When you see that person in person, you go, oh my gosh, that's not the way you looked. It's going to be pretty disappointing.
Most we've been getting a lot of people who want this, a photo on the finger. In other words, just put it on your hand and take a iPhone shot, you know, a Android shot, and just send it as is. They don't want the zoomed in picture, you know. They don't want to show their client. They want to see the zoomed in picture, but they don't want to show the client the zoomed in picture. They want to show it on the finger. You know, and we're actually might be developing that right now, where we're going to have a on the finger picture for every single stone. You know, so we would have the V360, the still, and the on the finger shot, because we're getting a lot of that, a lot.
Yeah, so we've got it on the website, and with virtual reality, you can easily put it on different setting and on different hands. But I think as a buyer of a diamond, if I look at the VS2 or SI1, and I understand that some stone, let's say, may be priced at a certain price point, some are more, I want to understand the difference, and obviously to choose the best diamond character within that price point for my client. And obviously we're telling the client, even between a G and an H, the client doesn't grade the diamond under a diamond light and face down. So we're telling the client, obviously we put them in perspective, but I think as a buyer, it's important. And for the client, in some cases, when it's on the finger, you can literally show them a picture of almost any ring, because they would not know if it's a VS or an SI or anything when it's that small. So yeah, but I think it is good to have a picture as best quality as possible, because it gives us more insight.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next question.
All right. Oh, my screen just moved. All right. So what would you do if a current customer cannot stand up to his present and upcoming commitments due to lockdown? And what if he asks for something new yet has late payments? Would you extend yourself? So this would be for the suppliers.
I think it totally depends on how long you know the customer, and we all need to be flexible right now. I'm not really expecting too many people to pay during this time. Obviously, it's a super difficult time for people personally, health-wise. A lot of individual people are sick, families are sick. You know, somebody's late on an invoice. I'm not gonna, call them up and get super angry about, at them. I don't think it would be a completely unreasonable thing to do right now. It's whoever pays us during this time, it's like an additional benefit, and we are appreciative, basically, that people are still following through on their obligations. If they want something new, I'd probably request them if they could clear the old stuff. If I didn't feel comfortable, that's a different story. If it went over their credit limit, but if I know someone for 2, 3, 4 years and I don't think they're going to, go out of business, usually, I don't know. I haven't been in that situation yet where I'm worried about somebody going out of business and asking us for more goods. I don't know how I would deal with that. If I was really worried about them going out of business, I probably wouldn't give them anything. Whatever we had, but so far it hasn't been the case. We all need to be understanding during this time, and I think most of our customers, our office is closed right now. People have orders, we're going in occasionally to ship things, but people understand it's just a really difficult time. Business is not even the first thing on anyone's mind right now.
Right.
He said it well.
Right. Let's see. What do you think about vendors who are not that clear about giving correct references on a retailer? This person says, we use JBT in a group of reliable references, but specifically in the current situation, it will be better to help each other in vendor community and make sure a retailer just doesn't take us all for a ride. Okay, so based off the conversation we just had, it sounds like you guys aren't experiencing requests that seem unusual right now. But that may come in the next couple of months where things are opening up and you're getting requests from suppliers. So how do you, trying to rephrase this question. I guess, how are you giving references? So you were talking about if you have a bad experience with a retailer, you know, if someone calls you for a reference, if they're still paying you Dotan, but it's not the best relationship, what kind of reference are you going to get? Because you don't want to damage your relationship with them, and they've given your name as a reference. So,
I will, to tell you the truth, even though it sounds corny or that we won't, but 99.9% we tell them the exact truth. And in our industry, there's no difference. Everyone has or has seen something like that. So I can say, listen, he's a schlepper. He's a great guy. He's been working with me for 15 years. He could pay you a little late, but he's a great guy and he's got a good business. I mean, that's a fair answer, right? So I told him that he's late, and I told him that he could, you know, sometimes he might not answer the phone, but I do business with him, you know, and on and on. So I think that references should always be real. If you're going to fake it, there's going to be an issue at some point, you know? So
Yeah.
that's what, you know, just tell them the truth, the full truth.
I think it's important for suppliers also to, you know, this is kind of like a hidden pact to not reveal to the end client exactly who said what. You kind of get 2 or 3 opinions and synthesize them however you want to. You know, if a client is asking for something that the references, you know, aren't comfortable giving them that amount, and they ask, oh, who did you call or what did they say? I ask someone an opinion kind of in confidence, and mess up their relationship with the, you know, the end customer or influence that in any way. It's not my business. So that's how we do it. But yeah, obviously, you know, I mentioned this before. I like giving honest references, and I like helping people that help us.
right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it is already 11:30. So it's been a wonderful hour and a half. I want to thank, it looks like we still have 110 attendees right now, which is fantastic.
Excellent.
I saw notes of people, including a friend, Craig Danforth, who I haven't talked to in forever. I'll guilt him later. I'm so happy that so many people joined. Thank you to the panelists. I would love to do another one of these. And for those of you who were wonderful and put questions up and we couldn't get to it, I will go through them. I'm happy to try to facilitate some answers from some of the vendors or retailers, depending on the question that you asked. And again, thank you so much. I appreciate everyone joining.
Thank you.
It was fun.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye, guys.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for-
Bye. Thanks.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
All right.